Welcome back to Earth Station Trek, a show where we trek from the early days on NBC to the future on Paramount Plus and everywhere in between. I'm Charles Kelso, and it's my privilege to introduce the Earth Station Trek crew. Keith Johnson.
Sometimes it's best that you don't know what I'm thinking.
Alan Seiler.
Ow, my leg hurts.
And Veronica Dashel.
Kapla!
Yes.
And can you believe this is the 160th time we've done this?
160. Holy moly.
And Charles, before you go out, I got to say, if we ever played one of those trivia shows where you know how you do the quick one-line summary of a show and somebody tries to guess it, I want Alan to say, ow, my leg hurts. And then we guess the show.
Oh, my goodness.
Well, welcome to our 160th episode, everybody.
Woo!
Yay!
Yay!
Go us.
That's right. Now, we've been doing something on the show every 20 episodes, thereabouts, for as long as we've been doing the show. And that's every 20 episodes, we'll watch the 20th episode and then the 40th episode and then the 60th episode of each of the Star Trek series that made it that far. And this is the last one that we're going to have to do. The 100, none of them made it 180, so the 160th is going to be it.
Yeah, Next Gen got to 178. That's the closest they came. DS9 was 176. Voyager was 174 or 3.
Okay.
So, yeah, they almost got there.
Almost.
Our show will have gone longer than any Star Trek series.
Yeah. Enterprise got canceled early, and the new paradigm for streaming shows, they don't do 20, 25 episodes a year.
Yeah,
so,
they'd have to
even if they get 7 seasons, they will never hit.
Yeah.
Right.
Wow. But you remember back when we were first starting all this and we were really like young in our podcasting career.
Mm-hmm.
And we were like, oh my gosh, we're about to hit our 20th episode.
Yeah.
We should do something special for that. And then we came up with this idea, but 20 seemed like such a milestone.
I know.
And here we are at 160.
That's right.
Of course, this will not seem like much of a milestone when we get to our 1000th episode.
Well, I don't even, how many Star Trek episodes are there now total? 800, 900, something like that?
Something like that.
Yeah.
It's amazing. And plus the movies.
Yeah.
You could literally talk about them forever.
Yeah, that's true.
We plan to.
All right. So today we're talking about the episode. Next Generation episode is Attached. The Deep Space Nine episode is It's Only a Paper Moon. And the Voyager episode is Prophecy.
That's right.
Before, as a quick summary, this was one of my most pleasurable watches we've ever had.
Oh, cool.
Mm-hmm.
It was really good, and I'll talk in detail about it later. One of the things that surprised me was the one episode I expected to like the least. It was still my least favorite, but that's not the same as it was bad. Mm. And I found more to like about it than I expected, so I'll probably talk about that one more because it's probably also most fans' least popular. But this was really fun. I enjoyed this a lot immensely.
I will say the same thing. And I say that as in the first 2 episodes that we're going to be talking about, I did not care for at the time that they first broadcast because it was all about sitting around and talking about your feelings. And I was like, I want somebody to shoot at somebody else, and I want a space battle, and I want spaceships. And plus, I'll also say that back during the original run of DS9, I really did not care for any episode that had Vic Fontaine in it.
Oh, wow.
I know. Wow. I know.
What were you thinking?
I have come around on that quite a bit. And my opinion of this one has changed considerably over the years. So we'll talk about it.
Okay. Well, let's kick it off with Attached. I mean, this is it's fodder for Picard and Crusher shippers for a start.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's probably the shippiest episode between those two.
Does that include Terry Metalis?
Right. And that's the thing that sticks out in my mind from when it first aired is I remember it being, I think it was even in the promo, the whole like, you're in love with me or you were in love with me kind of a thing.
Yeah.
The secrets will be revealed next time on Star Trek.
Oh boy.
But so watching it this time, I didn't remember what a good Riker episode this is. I just sort of forget about that whole plot, but Riker's great in this.
That's the thing that really struck me the most.
Yeah.
Is that the thing that I remembered was the Picard and Crusher thing, and they're running around and, listening to each other's thoughts and talking about their feelings and stuff. And I had really forgotten all that planetary politics stuff and how good Riker was in this episode.
Yeah.
I literally laughed out loud when Riker said, and take all that junk with you.
Right.
Check them out.
Me
was
too.
great. It was great.
Yeah, those guys got no chance of joining the Federation.
No.
They're all
Right, none.
I wrote down, I was a little surprised that Beverly was arguing the position she argued at the beginning of the episode with Picard during breakfast. Picard's like, I'm uncomfortable admitting a planet that's not unified and half the planet is not represented. And Beverly goes, well, it's not like half. It's only a quarter of the population and they chose not to join. It's like, that didn't sound like a Beverly position to me. Because it's still a planet. I mean, you can sit here all day long and say you don't have relationships with each other, but if 3/4 of the planet does something, technology, does new industry, does some crap to change the atmosphere, the other quarter is supposed to suck it. So that was a weird conversation for me, but I love the politics of it. And at the end, it shows why, there's things I've read about with the Federation, the things we've talked about before. You can't have slavery in the Federation. The Ferengi couldn't join because they oppressed women. Mm-hmm. And one of the things was you were supposed to have a world government. And I didn't know you could come in and what was the term? Was it associate or something? Basically, it wasn't full entry into the Federation. Now you see how that could be a problem.
Yeah.
And I love the recurring bit where both of the planetary representatives, they were both like, okay, well, I see you're just pretending not to be an ally of them. Oh, you're pretending not to be an ally of them? Like, I'm not an ally of either of you jerks.
It bordered on slapstick, but the ambassador from the Kess, it didn't spiral out of control, but the looks he would do, like he'd lean forward and then he'd go, how do I know I can trust you? It was actually funny. They somehow managed to make that funny in a way that made sense. And you love science fiction when everybody has those things from like every bad monster movie and Spencer's Gift, the little plasma lightning balls and all that kind of stuff. It was great.
Spencer's Gifts.
They had a thing back there that looked kind of like HAL 9000 also with the red eye.
Yes.
Well, what do we think about the Picard and Beverly stuff?
I'll tell you, I like I said, I didn't really enjoy it at the time and it aired, and I'm pretty certain I have never watched this episode a second time.
Oh, wow.
Until this afternoon. And on its own, I thought it was very well done. I thought that the performances were really strong. But the other thing that really struck me that would never have happened before this past year is that it makes Picard season 3 and the relationship between the two of those characters in that show so much. I mean, this really like pushes forward all that stuff that we got to see between the two of them in season 3 of Picard, where they have a kid together and there was all that stuff about, why didn't you tell me I had a kid? Well, what good would it have done to tell you that you had a kid and blah, blah, blah. And this really lays a solid path toward that relationship. And I was fascinated watching it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I like their dynamic just as friends.
Me
They're
too.
friends with a history, She was married to his best friend and so forth, who passed away. So then they have breakfasts together. But I mean, by season 7, they've long since established that history. And I think that this plays off that really well, where he's got regrets and things like that. Like you really do feel like these two characters go back a long way.
So, so some of our favorite Star Trek from recent years is basically fan fiction from 2 of the least watched episodes of The Next Generation.
What are the 2 least watched episodes of The Next Generation?
Lower Decks and this one.
These are the least watched episodes.
Not least watched, but they're like not like the ones you think of necessarily.
I don't know where you're getting your
That's interesting because I think that Lower Decks is one of the standout episodes.
Yeah. Okay. So for me,
particularly toward the end.
Oh, okay. The ones that
so it's not episode you would watch a lot, Veronica?
It's not that I wouldn't watch it a lot. It's one that I haven't seen a lot.
Okay. Well, what did you think of it?
I enjoyed it. It's the one that I didn't quite get to finish, so I don't remember how it ends. I had a vague recollection of this when Chuck was describing it to me the other night, and I was like, okay, kind of sounds familiar. I don't really remember anything about it.
Picard and Crusher died.
No, he's not.
It's
But
the
I did
clones
really-
going forward.
I did really like how they played with the being able to read each other's minds. It wasn't like they were like literally reading every single thing they were thinking. It was almost more of feelings and random bits of kind of strong emotion, but not exactly strong emotion type of thing.
Yeah, they're picking up bits and pieces from each other.
Yeah.
But like they said, though, it gets stronger as they're going along.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I actually like the fact that you couldn't fully, me personally, I like the fact that you couldn't fully tell what they were thinking, because it's kind of like in real life, if you read people's body language, sometimes you're like, what are they thinking? Because sometimes what you say and what you mean are different. When I first watched this, I watched this when it first aired back in the 80s or early 90s, and I adored the episode. It's one of my favorite in TNG. I don't think there's a human walking the earth, no matter what age it happened at, who doesn't have that person that you loved. Hell, it could have been a high school crush. Could have been, when you're 40, the person you loved and you didn't tell them and you couldn't tell them because of weird circumstances. And so it was really, for me, emotional when Picard basically talked about, and she goes, why didn't you tell me? And I'm thinking, well, hell, you didn't know? I mean, there's how many episodes where she goes, John Luke, if we don't make it, there's something I want to say to you. And she never said it. So,
Right.
Right.
And then I loved it. What I loved about the ending is you think about everything from Moonstruck to all these other shows. There's always these couples, the will they or won't they? And TNG was one of those. But what I loved at the end and how it ended, Veronica, was basically, as you know, in the campfire, he said he no longer had those feelings for her because it had been for 20 years. But at the end, you see he still loves her, and maybe it's going to change. And they actually kissed each other gently, tenderly. And it was basically like, let's see where this is going to go. I thought it was lovely. And Alan, what you said, I never thought about. What an incredible show to pair with Picard season 3. I never thought of that. Amazing.
Yeah. But here's the other thing. In that scene that you're talking about, it's Picard who says, maybe we shouldn't be afraid to explore these feelings now that we know that we both have them. In the first, at least the first season, maybe 2 of Picard, it's the other way around. He has those feelings for Orla Brady's character, and it's her. He's the one that pulls away from them, and it's her that's saying we shouldn't be afraid to acknowledge this.
Right.
And I just find that, I mean, of course, that's 40 or 50 or whatever years down the road. But I find it so interesting that a person at their different times of life can have such different reactions to basically the same situation.
Right.
Yeah. And also follow what you said, Alan, what I love Picard said, this is also who hasn't experienced this. When he first met Beverly, he was basically like, is it just basically hormones? Is it just, the infatuation that everybody has felt for someone? And then he realized, no, it was true love. And then he said, because, there's a fiery love and there's that deep, quiet love. Mm-hmm. And now it seems like the next love they will have would be the deep, quiet love, because I love the way she looks at him and she goes, I think I need to leave, basically. And then she stands in the hall. She's got the look and he's got the look. Sometimes that's a corny scene. I thought it was an incredibly lovely scene. I just loved everything about this, it was just great. I also like, the real quick thing is, you play that game when we talk about superheroes. What power would you like to have? Flight, invisibility. Telepathy has been the one power I have never wanted to have because I don't want to know what people are thinking. I'm making me talk like, I wish he'd shut the hell up, or he's ugly or something.
Right.
And I love the little scene where Beverly felt guilt about how this dude, she hurt him. And Picard's like, oh, you laugh about it, but you hurt that guy. And sometimes you don't want people to know things like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, right. that was an interesting sort of like peeling back the layers there, because at first he discovers this thing and she tells him the funny story, and then like, no, there's more to this. I thought that was really well done, and I like the bit where they're walking and she's like, I can't figure out where to go, so he glances at it and says, it's this way. And she's like, you don't even know, you're making that up.
Did you do this all the time?
Sometimes, not a lot, but sometimes the captain has to appear confident.
That's right.
And he had to be honest.
We have to go one way or the other. It's this way.
If I remember correctly, in the book Ringworld by Larry Niven, that happened, and someone was taking the lead, and they said the character said he had no idea which direction to go. It might have been in one of the Kzinti, and he said he didn't know which way to go. But when you're a leader, you have to pretend that you have confidence, even when you don't. And I love that. And then later on, it's cool because Picard said, we'll get to the force field, and then we'll figure out how to break it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like what else you gonna do? Sit here and die? So
Right.
that was good.
Yeah, I thought that was it's a good episode all the way around, and then there's more to it than I remember. I enjoy the Picard and Crusher stuff, and I still do.
Yeah.
But yeah, I forgot about a bunch of the little stuff that happens around it with the Riker and the aliens and Worf. I thought that stuff was all good too. I thought this was just a solid episode.
Yeah,
Yeah, this was a much better episode than I remembered it being, and it was, of the three, the one that I was least looking forward to rewatching, and I really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
My last quick thought on this, you can tell in all the series in the last season, they started doing character examinations of people, and sometimes you get pissed off. It's like, okay, now you want to look at Geordi's life. And this is an episode that I hate that they waited till the 7th season to give Dr. Crusher, but it's one of the better last minute character things I've seen. It didn't feel like it was a toss off. And I remember thinking back when I first saw it, and I thought again, I don't know what they did that they light her differently, because Gates McFadden looks more lovely than I think I've ever seen her in the series in this episode. I don't know if it's the lighting or something. And the last thing I have to say to end on a funny note, excuse me, did y'all see that Worf said, okay, beam down, and he literally walked out? He did not get confirmation that they beamed down. They didn't even look at the console. Like, did the transporter console say file download complete? And he beamed down to the planet where they had to drop a security field, and then he just walked out.
Right.
Like, what do you mean they didn't arrive? What?
Yeah, exactly. I did think that was a review. I did think that was an odd scene.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, they've never played it that way ever before.
Right.
Or ever since. But that one time, he's like, okay, I'm done. I'm just going to leave now.
Just boop, I'm out of here.
Yeah.
I did want to say too, I really like their civilian costumes and their little the breakfast meetings.
Yeah, me too.
They look different from what we wear, but I don't think they look cheesy at all. I think they look nice and stylish. That's something I wish they would do more. They like to make the civilian clothes more and more just like our clothes on the newer Treks. Sometimes they really are just wearing like off the rack stuff, like a button up shirt with a collar. And I really like the way they were by this point. How the civilian clothes looked. I thought that they looked good. They looked like adventurers in space.
Mm-hmm.
Agreed. Yeah.
In contrast to that, I thought the onesie that not the Kess, but the other people wore were just cheap and silly. And I was like, okay, they're aliens because of their onesie that they're wearing.
Yeah, they're some kind of rigid, oppressive alien because of the onesies. And I was like, did they borrow those from the Mark of Gideon's original series episode, or from any cheesy 1970s science fiction movie that showed the totalitarian Earth? Because you're right, Alan. Those costumes declared what they were as soon as you looked at them. It was great.
That's funny.
If only they had gloves of fascism.
I would love a sci-fi show that did that. Like, what are they wearing? Onesies? Totalitarian gloves? No, sir. All right, we'll beam down. Threat level 5.
That's
all right. Well, let's transition over to It's Only a Paper Moon.
Holy cow!
Episode.
I love this episode.
Holy cow!
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Here we are.
We're all just gonna sigh.
Yes.
It's just so good, and it's so profound. Mm-hmm. It's hard to really just jump into a discussion about it.
Yeah. Well, I think it's a great example of them just throwing the ball to the supporting actors, the reoccurring actors.
Yes,
and
the
just
entire
letting them carry
episode.
it. Yeah.
Sorry, the entire episode is carried by 2 guest characters, Nog and Fontaine, and it's like, no show does that.
Yeah,
it's crazy,
and it's like a holodeck adventure, but it's not like they're trapped in 1960s. They're trying to escape, or it's trying to kill him, or anything like that. He's just escaping to it, to escape what's happening to his life.
Right, and here's the thing that I'm most compare it to, and that is TNG season 4 episode 2. Picard has been turned into Locutus, and he's tried to wipe out the galaxy or whatever, and then he goes home to France to recover.
Yeah,
they spend an entire episode on the trauma that the character has been through, and the recovery that he's going through. But he's the lead character on the show. They did the same thing here with a guy who is a recurring character who gets maybe 3 or 4 episodes a year. And they throw him because it's important to do. They throw him this episode where he has to deal with the trauma, not just the physical trauma, but the emotional trauma of the war and the death around him and being injured by it. And this is not a quick and easy recovery to go through. And they actually took an episode and spent time on that. And that is just incredible.
Mm-hmm. And I thought both Aaron Eisenberg and Vic Fontaine were fantastic in this episode. Or James Darren were both fantastic in this episode.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I love the subtle stuff. Like, maybe it's not that subtle, but he's got to have his cane, and the doctors don't believe he needs the cane and so forth. So he gets him this nice fancy cane. And he's like, no, it's just fragile. Don't put too much weight on it. He's like, no, it'll probably be fine. We all know he doesn't need the cane, but I love that he, instead of just telling him that, because he felt like everyone thinks he's crazy, he just gives him this cane that you really can't it won't support your weight, but he still has it, sort of transitioning him off of that. I thought that was great.
Yeah.
You pointed out the 2 actors. I want to say also that I thought Nicole DeBoer was very good in this episode. And when she's only on for 1 season, you don't really get a whole lot of Ezri-centric storylines. And I thought that she was able to contribute to this one in a really good and really significant way. And it's not just the way that she was overseeing Nog and his progress, but also the way she was kind of coaching Vic Fontaine into how to get Nog to transition from the holodeck back into real life. I thought that was really, really well done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you'd think you'd be a little bit nervous if your patient is spending all of his time in the holodeck living a fantasy life. Like, I don't know if this is the right thing to do. Am I just letting him get worse?
Yeah, absolutely. Because, you've got a cane. A cane is a crutch. The holodeck is a crutch too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree. I like that. I thought the same thing about Nicole DeBoer is, as an actress and a character, 1 season to do this. And she fit in this episode. She was competent. They got gotten rid of that little, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm so young and I just got to trill. And she was just very confident. And also what I always find fascinating about shows like this, because I love the backstory. Aaron Eisenberg spent the first year or 2 just knowing they were going to fire him because he didn't know if his character was going to be used much. And and rest his soul, he was significantly older than Sirach Lofton. And he was always afraid that one day they were going to go, hey, we got this old dude paired up with this young kid, but it worked. And he is arguably the character in all of Star Trek with the greatest growth, at least in the TV series, arguably. Yeah. I mean, there's others. But I find it amazing that a character who didn't think he was going to last. And I know some of the showrunners of Deep Space Nine did not like Vic Fontaine's introduction. Some of them like, even some of the people there who are radicals, compared to Rick Berman and Branyan Braga, they're like, this is a stupid idea. And it becomes one of the greatest characters in Star Trek, which is amazing. Right. A 1960s lounge singer hologram. Amazing.
Yeah. And I always think back to Nog's story in this, but Vic had a good story in this too, where he's never been just left on for months on end. People will turn him on, sing a few songs, turn him off again, or come by to play cards. But he's never just sat around reading the paper and watching television and probably going to the store, and like he's never been on 24/7 before, and now he's gonna miss having his little life.
Well, and that was one of the things that struck me about this episode that I did not remember from the first time I saw it, is that story, that subplot basically of Vic and experiencing life for the first time. That was fascinating.
Yeah, that's what happened to the Doctor in Voyager. One of the reasons and ways he started growing was they left him on, and instead of turning him off all the time. That's why he started, reprogramming himself to do opera. And in our real life world, I forget what was that little video game thing that came out. You remember the one that came out a few years ago? It was a little bitty, kind of almost like a portable video game, and there's a little creature that lived in it, and you left it running all the time. It was weird. That's it. Yeah. And they could actually die if you didn't take care of them. And there's some
a
video
few years ago.
games-
That was when I was like 13.
Exactly.
That
That was like 26 years ago.
Yeah, for me, that was like just a little bit ago. And we're just now getting to that in real life with AI and video games, where more and more, I think our kids and grandkids will probably have video games and stuff that you leave them on all the time. And maybe they'd start growing in weird ways you don't plan or control if you're playing the game. So Vic and the Doctor, are kind of like the ultimate evolution or something like that.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like I'm just going to say all good things about this episode. I keep trying to think of something to criticize, but I think they just knocked it out of the park with this one.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just a pivotal Star Trek episode, and it's just really impressive what they were able to pull off with this, because it's not on paper. It seems like it's a big swing. I mean, we're going to have the Ferengi guy and the holodeck character, and then just let them be in 60s New York or 60s Las Vegas for an episode.
Mm-hmm.
And just living a life, and it really works is the way it ties in with the characters.
And you know what I thought about while I was rewatching this episode, that really made me. I mean, I said that at the time I didn't really care for Vic Fontaine, but I kind of got used to him, and I kind of came around to him later on. But it was watching this episode again today that made me think that really the last 2 seasons of DS9 was essentially a World War II story. Mm-hmm. And why would it not be appropriate to have a character like Vic in that kind of setting where, I mean, I just thought, I was like, how could I have not got this, 30 years ago? How did I not really catch on to where they're going with this aesthetic? And so it really changed my whole opinion about Vic.
It's awesome. Yeah, I liked him from the start because James Darren was in the time tunnel, and I was a fan.
Yeah.
Oh yes, exactly. I loved him in Time Tunnel.
You think about Vietnam War movies like Coming Home and The Deer Hunter, and I can't remember, but there's based on what you said, Alan, there's a famous World War II movie that deals with 3 soldiers coming home, and I just saw it last month. I can't remember the name, but one of the soldiers, both his hands had been blown off in the war. And it deals with the whole thing of coming home and trying to reestablish yourself in the normal life. And frankly, how people who have been living, they've been struggling too. They just don't get it. And I love at the beginning, Aaron Eisenberg, I wonder how much he practiced for that episode, because when he walks in, the way he's walking, I don't just see a guy who seems to have trouble with his leg. I see a guy whose spirit is broken. Yeah. That's incredible acting that he's done. Amazingly good acting that actor did in that episode. And I mean, he just knocked it out. You believed everything about him.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's like you are a completely different person. Physically, I mean, yes, that is true. But emotionally, you are a completely different person than when the last time you saw these people that you're coming home to. Mm-hmm. And how do you know how to relate to these people? How do you... they aren't going to really know at first how to relate to you either. I loved the scene where Jake in their quarters finally just says, dude, I'm sick of this. I'm sick of your dumb song that you've been playing for 3 days. I'm really trying to be nice here, but I've got to get some sleep.
Yeah.
I love that because, it takes that where there has to come a breaking point where someone starts to actually react to the other person in a normal and natural way.
Right.
To kind of make those steps forward. And I thought that was really good. And of course, that's what drove him to the holodeck. And that's what led to the whole storyline. But still.
Yeah. And I like, too, that it's not just the loss of his leg that he's dealing with. It's wrapping his head around the idea that he's going to die. He went to battle and he saw a bunch of guys close to him die. And then he wakes up with part of himself gone. And it's like, especially when you're young, just doesn't seem like you're not going to get hurt. You do whatever dumb things you want and you're going to be fine. But then I actually come to grasp with the terms that no, especially living out in the universe and on this outpost, he's in a dangerous place. He's in a war. And like I said, wrapping his head around the fact that it could be him.
Yeah.
Yeah. One of the things, one of the things I was thinking about what you're saying, that's true. And Alan, I think that was great what you said about when you try to help people, at some point in time, even for their own good, you can't coddle them. You have to just treat them, as you say, normally. Those who listened to the show know a couple of years ago, I had a really bad thing in the hospital. I literally was like 2 hours from dying. And when I came back from that, my wife was I was like 45 pounds lighter than I am now. And the doctors at the hospital told my wife they didn't know if they were going to be able to save me. So when I came home, my wife's like, hey, what do you want? This and that. And, of course she was, trying to make sure I came back. And a month later, she was giving me some grits. And I'm like, I don't like that spoon. Give me another spoon. And then she brought me some bacon and eggs. I was like, I don't like that plate. She's like, okay, that's it. If you want a different plate, get up and go get your own damn plate. And then I was like, oh, I can't believe you treat me like that. And I gotta be honest, I started crying. And it was like, but then after we fought, we started laughing. And it was a wake-up call I needed because I was going down a weird path, And
sometimes you need somebody to call you. Yeah, sometimes you need someone to call you on your BS.
Yeah, and I can totally see Phyllis doing that too.
Right. Absolutely. She's like, I'm about to knock you in the head with this plate, so get your own damn plate. So I agree with you, Alec, because when I was watching the show, even today, and I've seen the show a million times, I was like, dang, Jake, you're being kind of mean to Nog. But they're like, no, that's normal. They're roommates. It's like college roommates. I was like, dude, pick your crap up. Turn the music off. So I thought that was great.
Yeah, and it's his best friend since childhood.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
If anyone can tell you you're being a jerk, that's who it should be. Get over yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah. The other thing I love about the episode is when everybody was there when Nog first came out. One of the things that Alan, you said about war stories, they talk, there's the whole thing. They also suffer who only wait, the wives and the children and the older men who can't fight back home. I love that, Nog's stepmother, whose name just escaped me, Chase Masterson's character. Lita. This gives her, it's not a lot, but it gives her some of the best acting I've seen her be able to do in Deep Space Nine. And this arc, not just this show and the arc war, it brings everybody in. It brings Kira in, Dr. Bashir, frickin' Quark. Everybody starts changing. Quark the Ferengi sees war in a completely different way. And the way they all treat Nog, it's an effectively dramatic show that drops a lot of the kind of cliches and stereotypes of Star Trek and science fiction. And everybody there, you really believe this is a war story, despite the racists. And I love that about it.
Yeah,
absolutely. Definitely.
Okay. Any final thoughts on that before we move on to Prophecy?
It's pretty good.
Yeah.
I'm so glad that Berman and Braga were working on Voyager instead of Deep Space Nine.
So let's talk about Voyager. The 160th episode of Voyager is called Prophecy, where they find an old Klingon ship. Not a lot of Klingon episodes on Voyager.
Nope.
Going into this, and we listed the three titles that we were going to be talking about. I knew the first one. I didn't remember it very well, but I knew what it was. Obviously, I knew what Paper Moon was all about, because we've talked about that many times on our show, just in reference. I had no clue what Prophecy was. I had no anything. I didn't know who was in it or what they were doing. And then I saw that it was a Klingon episode, and I'm like, Klingons? The only one that I remember is that Ship of the Dead episode. Right. I completely 100% forgotten about this episode. So it's like almost like watching it for the first time.
Yeah. What do you think?
I really enjoyed it.
Okay.
It's not the best of the three that we watched for this show, but I thought it was very enjoyable. And I thought the exploration of religious beliefs and interpretation of ancient texts and things like that was really well done. It's not a spectacular episode, but I found it thoroughly enjoyable. And after 2 episodes about people exploring their feelings, I was glad to have an episode that opened with a space battle.
Right. Yay, shooting. Well, Veronica, you watched it for the first time today, didn't you?
So I feel like I've seen it before, but I have very little recollection of it because when Chuck was describing it to me, I was like, okay, that sounds vaguely familiar, but I don't remember any of it really.
What did you think?
But I enjoyed it a lot. It was the way that the ship's captain was trying to tie everything in because he wanted this to be the Calamar. Did I say that right?
No,
I don't remember.
Komar.
What?
Kalamach. Konmach.
Yeah.
He was Captain Kolar.
Yeah.
Oh, there we go.
He was just thrilled to find a Klingon who's pregnant. Like, oh, thank God.
Yeah.
We can fly around the Delta Quadrant for a long time looking for a pregnant Klingon.
Yeah.
The Kobamach. The Kobamach.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. But yeah, then everyone eventually believing it because the baby's DNA ended up saving everyone.
Mm-hmm.
I thoroughly enjoyed that, and then they're all like, "Okay, cool, this is the right person. They said to go to this place. Let's go."
Well, I like how they introduce it. Like, obviously, this is just a prophecy. Maybe it was written by a madman in a cave. Who knows? Which Klingons don't even usually say. So like, well, maybe we can look at the prophecies and see if any of them apply to you.
Yeah.
And they do. Yeah. And then by the end, the baby has healed these people. It's like, wait, maybe is our baby the Kumamok?
Add it to the list of names.
Right.
That was a cute scene.
Like, maybe this prophecy was real after all.
Yeah. Did we ever get the baby's name before?
I'm sure. I don't remember what it is.
Oh, me neither.
Nah, who knows?
Keith, what did you think of this one?
I really liked it. Voyager, to me, is an uneven series. And as we've always said about Star Trek, that doesn't mean that it's bad. And it doesn't mean that the episodes I don't love are bad. I just don't like them as much as I like others. Voyager, to me, never lived up to its promise. You know, the promise, remember, was a divided crew, Maquis and Federation, out there. It, to me, too often felt like TNG or TNG. It was too much of a TNG clone. Every now and then, when they have a great episode, it stands out because the rest of the episodes are they're fine. They're fine. I do not dislike Voyager. But this one stood out a little bit because, like Veronica was saying, and Alan was saying, it examines religion. And when I was writing it, I kept writing, my goodness, and before the show, we talked about religion. I was raised in the church like we all were. My dad was a preacher. And so much of faith is about what you want it to be. You know, in Christian religion, there's the concept of the Antichrist. Man, how many people have been called Antichrist by somebody in any given generation? Caesar, Napoleon, Stalin, Hitler, of course. We're still waiting for that Antichrist. And I thought it was wild when the guy himself behind, even away from the other Klingons, he's like, look, I don't know if this crap is real or not, but I need to make it work because we've been doing this for 100 years and we need a savior. And it's like, wow.
Yeah. They're going to fly around forever.
That was deep.
Especially in the Delta Quadrant.
Right. I mean, if you're on a religious quest to find the savior of your race, the Delta Quadrant is not the place to go because you aren't going to find anybody there. I mean, that's odd.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was something that made no sense to me. You're right, Alan. Why did they go to the Delta Quadrant to look for their celestial Madonna and their savior? And then
I assume they got sucked into a wormhole.
Well, I thought that it was 100 years. I think they've just been flying that long, but I think that they're following this prophecy. And the prophecy was like, go that away. And but I mean, in the end, they did find this.
Well, they sure did.
Klingon lady that healed them of this disease.
Yeah,
that's right. That's right.
But you know, as a person who still considers himself a man of faith, even I had to say, but you know, guys, if you'd stayed in the Alpha Quadrant, I'm pretty dang sure that one of the doctors would have some point stumbled upon, let's try, is there any species resistant to this virus? Humans are. I wonder if we can synthesize. So, and then it's a nice ending, but honestly, if the baby cured that disease and she and B'Elanna are blessed, I tend to think they would have kidnapped them. I don't think they would have said, hey, they're like, we just met Jesus, bye. And then they left. I think they would have tried to take her. I think there would have been a continuing battle. They would have said, no, you come with us and bless this new planet because we blew up a ship. I have no idea also how they're going to form a new empire. I mean, I know they will. It's like that ship would have come in handy to start a new civilization.
Yeah, that is fanatical devotion to your beliefs if you're going to blow up your damn ship.
Yeah, we're all in.
Right. I mean, come on. And then they're just like, okay, well, we're going to live on a different planet now.
Yeah, I kind of didn't get that. It's weird, but maybe the point was he crafted the prophecy to do what he wanted. Because at that point, he's like, I'm sick of traveling. Like you said, Charles, 100 years. And he's like, I need a planet. So maybe he crafted the prophecy, because that doesn't seem like the end of the prophecy for me. That's not the problem. I would have been like, are you kidding me? This is it? All that kid did was cure a virus that they could have cured in the Alpha Quadrant, and now we're on this crazy planet, and the Borg will probably come by and assimilate us. I just didn't get it.
Yeah, but I mean, even the guy said, like, he at first he's talking about these prophecies, and he's like, they can kind of mean what you want.
Yeah. You know, you can take a couple of different ways. And, you know, when you're talking about like televangelists and things like that, who, you know, there have been occasions of people twisting scripture into whatever they want their congregation to believe about it. But the other side of this thing is that when you're talking about and I didn't look up the timeline on this thing, and I really wish I had, but I literally just finished the episodes like, 15 minutes before we started recording. But when you're talking about the baby having cured the virus, well, we're talking about stem cell research, and stem cell has been a big argument for a long time. And I wish I knew at what point we were at in that argument when this episode was written and aired, because it seems like it's maybe a commentary on that particular argument. Just like, at the end of season 1 of DS9, when they blew up Keiko's school, the whole episode was religion or creationism versus science. And that was the argument that was raging at that time. So I'm really curious to know how the stem cell argument or debate at that time was going.
Yeah, because it's just sort of thrown in there matter of factly.
It really was.
And it's not like on a very special Voyager.
The guy who played their leader, Kolar, that actor I thought was phenomenally good in that role.
Okay. Yeah, he was.
He was almost like Michael Dorn and the guy who played Kern. Tony Todd. He had a presence. He had a presence about him. I don't know what it is. I just liked him. He wasn't, and possibly also because he wasn't the standard Klingon, was always babbling about killing you and the guy who went to kill Tom Paris. But he was very good in that role.
Yeah.
You always get guest actors coming on to play Klingons, and they don't always really get what Klingons are all about. And I felt like this guy really did.
Yeah. I like the evil Klingon guy too, who's sort of his antagonist, second in command, or whoever he was. Although I don't buy Tom Paris lasting that long in a Bat-Leth fight.
No,
with a Klingon warrior.
Heck
Thank
no.
you.
I don't care how much he's been training with B'Elanna.
No, like all afternoon.
Yeah. Yes, I love that.
Right.
I also laughed when they were talking about being concerned about him fighting. And Neelix, I can't believe his straight face, said, "Well, the Bat-Leths are blunted." It's like, are you kidding me? Blunt instruments can kill you sometimes faster than a right blow in the kidney. You're dead. So I thought that was wild too.
And speaking of Neelix, I really liked his little side story with the Klingon woman, how he saved him. Poor Harry Kim.
Oh, you like that, Veronica?
Yeah, that was hilarious, especially right at the end when they were like doing it all over Tuvok's room. Tuvok comes in and he's like,
I'd be getting a cleaning crew in there. I'm not gonna clean it up myself. He was told him to get out so he can clean it himself. Like,
yeah, right. Exactly.
It was funny. I thought that was funny, but I didn't like it on this show. To me, it was a B plot that was, I guess it was a B plot. It was too comedic for the seriousness of the rest of the show. That's a personal thing. I liked it. I just didn't like it there in this show. It didn't work for me. Also, I don't know, did y'all get this? I don't know if it's because they had to write the show like this, and I felt this without even thinking about the plot. Kate Mulgrew's portrayal of Janeway seemed incredibly almost chill and low energy. And she was way too accepting of the Klingons at the start. I mean, you want to have detente and you want to be friendly with Klingons, but she didn't seem to have the kind of caution and fire that I'm used to Janeway. Something just seemed off with that. Like when they tried to shoot her, she's like, okay, well, come on board. And then she's like, and then when he said, oh yeah, I blew up my own ship. And she's like, well, that was pretty intense. It's not what I'm used to Janeway. And the whole time I'm like, Janeway, you need to be just a little more forceful.
Right.
And
I didn't think about that, but as you're saying it, I'm like, oh yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't Janeway, because Janeway's a diplomat, but she's always strong. I didn't feel the fierceness from Kate Mulgrew, and maybe they wrote her that way, because I will tell you at the end, I couldn't not see this. I wrote down, how the hell did all those Klingons get Federation phasers? I checked. They had Starfleet phasers, and I know you can say they jumped the guards and so forth, but there was like 6 Klingons in that ship takeover, and every one of them had a Federation Starfleet phaser. And I'm kind of like, here we go, Tuvok, it's on you, and it's on Janeway. The phasers all should have been locked up. And then, even though they said they were happy, when they beamed off, they didn't have a security contingent. Tuvok's on the bridge. He's like, I better run down there because they're trying to take over the ship. Like, he should have been there.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah.
And how convenient writing. He said, we can't beam them off the bridge. They have a force field. He goes, okay, well, can we beam in? It's like, oh, yeah, we can do that.
No.
I didn't know you had one-way force fields either.
Right.
So, and I guess why this is probably my, I still liked it, but I found a little bit of time to slightly nitpick. Like Harry was gone, and then Tom, the ace pilot, and also don't forget backup doctor, Captain Janeway's like, hey, override the transporter beam. So Tom was doing ops, even though he's the pilot. So remember in the original series, we talked about every time somebody got up from a chair, somebody sat back down that chair immediately. So Tom was flying the ship, even though he was sitting there. Then he was doing the transporter stuff. Then when the Klingons came in, he grabbed his phaser, just like sitting on the console, and he starts rolling and shooting. It's like, dude.
Yeah, no, they usually like keep them like under the console for a takeover, because I've seen them reach in their console before when they've done a hostile takeover in other episodes.
He had it like there, like a cup of coffee. It was right. I noticed he didn't even go under. He just like raced over there and he started shooting people.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
I'm talking a lot now. I have a question. After this episode, do y'all think, Deep Space Nine aside, does Star Trek overall support religion, look down on religion, or is it neutral? Because I couldn't tell at the end. Voyager after Deep Space Nine is the only Star Trek episode that even borders on giving respect to religion. Not spirituality, but religion. There's a whole thing about B'Elanna when she died and she went to see her mother. This episode gives respect to faith, even if it was maybe false. Deep Space Nine, of course, is the most pro-religious, pro-faith show in Star Trek. So do you think overall does this show support religion? Does it make fun of it because the guy basically admitted that he was changing the faith to suit his things? Where does it come down on religious belief?
I think this one toes the line, where you can interpret it as they're twisting all these things to try to make it fit the prophecy, or you can think, oh, look, all these things happen to have lined up. It does fit the prophecy.
Yes.
So I think this one's sort of right down the middle. Whereas you look at something like First Contact, or, not First Contact, the one with the Mintakans on Next Generation.
Who watches the
Watchers? Where it's like, obviously they're more advanced because they have no concept of God. Then we introduced a concept of God to this culture, and now we've ruined it. It's very much like an atheist viewpoint. So I think this one, like I said, it was sort of just right down the middle.
Yeah, I agree. Similarly, there's that episode of DS9 where there's a prophecy about the three-headed dragon or whatever it is, and you have the 3 Cardassian women who come in, and it turns out that everything lines up with the prophecy, but not the way that everybody thought that it was going to. Right. And also in Voyager, there was the episode where you had the alien culture's afterlife that Harry Kim ends up in, basically. And I felt like that one wasn't as dismissive. It wasn't like everything is science, and the prophets on DS9 are really space aliens and all this kind of stuff, because Janeway said, you have experienced something really profound, and she gave him, take time off and just go explore, write a poem or paint a picture about what you feel like you experienced, because he was going through this situation where he's like, I have seen someone else's afterlife and it isn't what they thought it was. So what does that say about my beliefs and my afterlife? I thought that was a really interesting approach to a really complex situation.
Alan, Alan, what you said just made me think of another Voyager episode. It's the one where Neelix died and did not go to the forest.
Right.
And his faith was destroyed for a while because of that. Because he did not go to his heaven.
Yeah.
And it made him doubt. So yeah, Voyager, that's the thing. That's why I say Voyager is uneven. It's never a bad show, but it was always just perfectly fine. And then it would do ones like the one you mentioned, Alan, the one with Neelix, and this one that just like, wow, this show had a lot more potential, I think, that it reached, many times.
Yeah.
And then you got Chakotay, who's a man of faith, and we can't talk about, the real life guy who was supposedly the Indian Native American consultant who turned out to be a charlatan.
Right.
But even Chakotay was a man of some kind of faith, if not religion. And I think, well, you're right, Charles. I think Star Trek ultimately toes the line. There's spirituality and then there's religion. Two different things. There's faith and there's belief in a God. Two different things.
Yeah. I think also it depends on the writer. I mean, it's not as if it's a person making Star Trek. And I mean, also, people have to come up with ideas. So maybe you get a good idea. You're not meant necessarily, trying to push an agenda or something. You're just writing a story that works for the characters.
But it's not only the writer though, because it's the script editor or the producer who's still making the call about what script to commission. Mm-hmm. So these have to be done in a certain way that fits Voyager's aesthetic.
Right.
Yeah.
And sometimes too, just the way the lines are delivered can change the way you interpret the way the characters are experiencing what's happening.
Absolutely.
So it's amazing you say that about how the lines are delivered, because what really tied this show off to me and made the show not just acceptable, but a really good show was that little moment at the end when Kolar gave B'Elanna the batlet. Mm-hmm. And in that 30 seconds or 1 minute, the look on Roxanne Dawson's face, and the whole thing about her, of course, she's always been embarrassed to be a Klingon. They took her just a little more toward accepting herself. And that's what religion's all about. You don't know if it's true or not. Like I have friends who don't really believe in God, but they still raise their children in the church because if nothing else, it gives them a good moral foundation. Mm-hmm. And then they can decide if they believe later or not. So B'Elanna doesn't know if she believes in their faith, but it gave her a little bit more of her Klingonness. And that's not necessarily bad.
That scene and the one midway through the episode where the Klingon captain comes in and does the prayer for the dead and is going to include her grandmother in that. And at first she's a little dismissive of it because, that's a thing that I did when I was a kid. And then she just kind of gets that profound sense of what it is that he's doing. And she joins in with him. And I loved that scene.
Yeah.
That was probably my favorite scene in the episode.
Yeah.
That was a space battle.
Yeah.
I thought that scene was good too. Because I was raised in church. I've been an atheist for like 25 years, but I mean, there are still those, rituals from your childhood that I don't just pretend in and out, but all of a sudden, if someone's doing something, especially because it was her grandmother and I went to church with my grandmother when I was a kid, that sort of resonated of just, not that I don't believe in all the heaven stuff, but just the fact of going through that something that was meaningful to me when I was a child, and just going through the, you can see her mouth in the words, like she still remembers that. She remembers doing that as a kid, and that was the first time I remember hearing about you have to pray for people in Stovercourt or something bad happens to them.
They can't rest.
Right.
Yeah. That was new information, and I thought that was super interesting.
Yeah. On the whole, I thought this was like a good Star Trek episode of the week. It's not an all-time classic. It's not one of the super memorable ones, but I think you turn on Star Trek this week and this happens. It's a good this week's Star Trek episode.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah,
it's got the elements that you expect to get from Star Trek. It's got some battle, and it's got some Klingons, and it's got exploration of morality, and that's Star Trek, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I also thought it was interesting because I was struggling with the incredible coincidence that they happened to bump into the one ship in the Delta Quadrant with a half Klingon and a half,
that's
whatever.
Prophecy, buddy. That's not coincidence.
Exactly. Yeah, but again, to the point, as you're saying, but at the same time, you could, if it had it not been B'Elanna, at some point in time, he probably would have crafted a different type. He probably would say, "Okay, turn around, let's go back." Maybe it was. I don't know if you remember the Old Testament story of Abraham, God told him to go sacrifice his son. Mm-hmm. By the way, one of those got me in trouble as a kid because I questioned that. But God basically said, take your son, who you basically waited 100 years to have, the most beloved thing in your life, and go sacrifice him to me. And then when Jesse was about to kill his son because God told him to, and I am not endorsing this legend, God says, okay, basically I wanted to test you. And so to what you said, Alan, I could see if they hadn't bumped into B'Elanna, maybe the guy would have said, hey, it's time to turn back. And they'd be like, turn back. Yeah. The prophecy wanted to test and see how faithful we are. So now we can turn back and go back the other way because we're just, you can warp prophecy into whatever you want after a while.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. I enjoyed all 3 of the episodes this week. We're going to have to come up with a new thing. We were just talking about that privately we're going to do 20 episodes from now. We need a new shtick.
Yep.
Yeah.
But yeah, this has been fun. Right. I can't believe we made it all the way through to the end of them.
I know.
It was a good one. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, Keith, where can people find more of you?
On X and Facebook, primarily the ESO Network Facebook groups.
How about you, Alan?
CosmicCreative.com. KOZMIC
And how about us, Veronica?
FeltNerdy.com.
Or?
Monkeying Around, a podcast about the monkeys.
That's right. And join us. Starting next Thursday, we've got new Star Trek episodes to talk about.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited.
Yeah, next week we've got 2 Star Trek, or I guess it's this week as this episode's coming out. This Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern, we'll be going live talking about the latest Star Trek episodes. And then we'll be doing that for the conceivable future because I'm hoping that Prodigy will be right on its heels. But I'm hoping they wait till Discovery is over. Space them out a little bit.
Oh my gosh.
Apparently they have no control over that though.
In the US they do.
Do they?
Yeah.
All right. Veronica, do you have a closing for us this week?
Today is not a good day to die.
Hey.
There you go.
All right. Bye, everybody. Happy Hub 160.
Yay.
Clink.